Part 17. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 162. Shut up, Father Cao interrupted the song. The return of the third son's glory. Grandpa Cao was guilty because he had treated the third son differently. Now that the Cao family has weakened, he wants to win over this prosperous three son, and wants to brag about being a strong backing for the third son, but he did not expect to be demolished by himself. Come on, Father Cao took the account book in his hand and fell to Yanj. Since he won't manage the account, give it to someone who can do it. Yanji sideways avoided the ledger. Cao Zijhen, who had been sitting next to him, got up at this moment, and reached out to stop the words. On such a festive day, what is the anger between the old man and the sister-in-law? It's not a big deal. You can't worry about eating. We will take another seat when the old lady Zhangluo is ready. Cao was still smoking in her house. She had never been to the third son who had crawled out of the belly of other people, and she wouldn't rush into it. For so many years, how can Mr. Cao not know his mother-in-law's thoughts? He waved his hand and said to the third aunt, "You go." With a glance at the words, Father Cao said to Mrs. "Pick up the ledger, and you will take care of your family affairs." The third aunt is so clever that she can make the daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law make troubles at this time. This Cao family is certainly not so easy to manage. But for an auntie to be able to take charge of the house is a lifelong dream. The camel is thinner than a horse, and the Cao family will never be able to survive. The little anxiety in the third aunt's heart was also dispelled by the joy of being about to take over the house. With a smile, she picked up her account book and said modestly, "Where can I take care of the Cao family's business from my small door and small house?" The young grandmother is talented and knowledgeable. In the future, she still needs young grandma. The old man Cao snorted coldly. What's the use of talented and knowledgeable, even a family cannot control? You hurry down to the dinner party. When the third aunt was too far away, the old man Cao saw that Yanj was still standing there, and he was furious and asked, "What are you doing here?" Yanj was not panic, and continued to say, "I can't take care of Cao's family business, and I can't do well with Cao's parents. I'm very panicked, so I ask you to go out." Cao Laozi. This daughter-in-law is a reasonable person and a thoughtful person. Why is it so bad to have him faceless again and again in front of his younger son? The old man Cao wants to maintain the majesty of the head of the family, so I don't want to stare at Yanj and say, you can rest. You can really enter the Cao family as anyone." He was interrupted by Cao Zi before he finished speaking. "My father is joking, don't worry about Sun Zi. A talented person like Sun Zi, the housekeeper really grieved you. You can rest assured, father will not blame you." In this case, the old man Cao didn't want to be too stiff, and because Yan Ji was also a member of the Fang family, he really couldn't say that he would give him off. So Cao Zixuan handed a step, and Grandpa Cao held back his anger and narrowed his eyes and sang, "Here are all men. What are you a woman doing here? You can't go on." Yan Ji never thought that she could really get a divorce today. She did this to give Cao family a disappointment. After all, the current Cao family really didn't dare to let her go. Although Cao Laozi said to let the Yanj roll down, he was worried that Yanj would continue to compete with him. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 163. Fortunately, the words reasonable went on after a blessing. It was dark, and subtle fragrance followed Yanj's side, straightening her waist, but as soon as she entered the courtyard of Yanj, the master and servant entered the room. She helped Yanj unwind her cloak, and exhaled, frightened. "Damn me, grandma young and old, what kind of tendon are you hitting wrongly? Even saying those words really lost my scared soul." Yanj smiled and calmed her. She is a conservative little girl. Probably in her eyes, Yan's practice is no different from death. The third ant was too new, and probably wanted to make it perfect, so after a while, someone sent me food for Yanj, who greeted the sublime to eat her leftover food, and called someone to burn the water. Sent here, soaked in a wooden barrel. Hotly hydrolyzed the frustration of Yanj, she closed her eyes, and the insane shouted, "Why don't you ask me if there is a mighty person in this plane?" Yan's song, "I don't ask, don't say it." The chicken wondered, "Why? I want to strangle you." Ant Jiao Jiao raised his head and hummed, "Do you want to know?" Yanj, "Don't tell me, this time I don't want to know at all, he is not there, I don't want to help him investigate the situation. He doesn't provoke me, I don't provoke him, just be fine. If he isn't, I can do it myself, so I won't get rid of that beast's tooth again." The chick reminded her, "That tooth wasn't yours, it was the brick's." Yan's song, "The brick is my son." Chicken, who originally thought it was ugly then going to rebuild it. The words are silent, and her conversation with this guy is a waste of words. She didn't admit it, but suddenly she said it was awkward. There was a faint breath of breathing behind him. Yan Ji frowned, but did not turn in time. She grabbed the water in the bucket and splashed it. It seemed to be playing, but her body moved to the other side of the bucket without any trace. Dark fragrance, "Give me the towel." Sure enough, the towel was handed over. But the hand that handed the towel was obviously a man's hand. Yan Ji reached out for the towel, but pinched the man's wrist for a moment. At this time, he turned around and grabbed the man's neck, and dragged the person into the bucket. It was also a moment of turning around, and Yan Ji saw that the person behind him was Cao Ziqiang, the second son of Cao family. This man. She didn't want to make this man better after merging the host's memory. She didn't expect this guy to be fat and came to look for abuse in person. Probably I heard that she collided with Father Cao today, and felt that she had lost her favorite at Cao's house, so she came here to suppress her. Cao Ziqiang headed into the barrel first. The water splashed in the bucket. After Yanj held down his head for a while, she found that a weak woman could not be parried by Cao Ziqiang's resistance. Sooner or later she would be counterattacked by this guy, so she jumped out of the bucket. The stool on one side hit Cao Ziqiang's head. He also held Cao Ziqiang's clothes in a coma to sink into the barrel, so that he rested his head on the barrel so that he would not be drowned. Only then did Yan Ji enter the screen and put on his clothes. As she wiped her hair with a towel, she walked out from behind the screen, and Yan Ji was about to open her mouth to sing subtle incense. As soon as she raised her eyes, she saw Cao family's third son Cao Zixuan leaning against his beam. He bowed his head, probably feeling Yan Ji's eyes, and looked up and smiled at Yan Ji. He smiled stubbornly, and instantly stained his illustrious facial features. "Is the red mole on my chest born of nature? The white tender skin of my sister-in-law is so beautiful." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 164. He didn't ask Cao Ziqiang why the bleeding on his head fainted in the bucket, and he didn't ask Yan Ji how he was in the house with his uncle when he was a bitch. Partially asked about such mixed words. In this case, she was clearly stinging her. This little uncle, was born to like me? That box was stunned, and here was another perseverance. Yan Ji glanced at him, "Thank you for the compliment. She is a geeky system." The host not only has a good figure but a better face. The man skipped her figure and only mentioned the mole on her chest. Does this mean that her are not big enough and that a mole is not attractive? Where did Cao Zi know the careful thoughts of Yanj? He walked to Yanj with a few steps, took the towel that wiped Yan's hair, and helped Yang to wipe his hair. Sunzi is the first beauty in Beijing, a complimenter it has been a few laps in the capital. Where can I praise Sunzi? Yang wants to push him away, but he grabbed Yang's waist with his other hand and turned Yang around. After holding her out of the side room, he held her in a doll holding pose, and let her sit on the dresser stool. Sunzi do nt mess around. Zi is a rough man, clumsy, pulling the hair of the sister-in-law, and the sister-in-law is not distressed. His voice is slow, and his hands are slower. He said that it was rubbing his hair with the help of songs. However, he inserted 5 fingers into the wet hair of the songs and slid down a little bit. This is clearly a further preaching song. Yan Ji resisted a little, and his hand strength was heavy, and he frowned. Everything was said to keep the sister-in-law. The sister-in-law is really disobedient. Yan Ji stared coldly in the mirror. Believe it or not, I call someone. She was so brave that she dared to come and beat her. The female should be surrounded by the male. She didn't mind the man's diligence, but the man thought that she had a small breast and at the same time tried to hit her, which made her intolerable. Cao Zixi smiled lowly. It seemed that Yan Ji was telling a big joke, and he laughed weakly, then bent his head on Yan Ji's shoulder, and looked at the person in the mirror like Yan Ji. It was just that he looked at the words, "Is Sunzi so uninteresting?" When Cao Zixi talked, it seemed intentional, and the hot air in his mouth flew on the delicate neck of Yang, and sometimes even his lips would touch Yang's neck. It seems he didn't know it, and continued to say with a smile, "It's fun to call someone, I think those people will tie me, or they will tie him." His snoring, special intimacy, and lingering syllables, were murmured after the sugar was on the tip of his tongue, lingering. People who didn't know thought he was calling his little lover. "Well, is it really fragrant on your body? Did you wipe it?" "It smells good." The tip of his nose was on the white neck exposed by Yang, gently and slowly. Yan Ji's expression was indifferent, and there was no emotion in his eyes. Although the woman of this era is no longer as statusless as the ancient woman, if she was seen by the Cao family, she would probably think about killing her secretly, lest this kind of thing spread to Cao's family. Whether she voluntarily or not could not resist, it was her who ultimately lost. What's he thinking about? It's hard to get so absorbed. Is he thinking of elder brother? Also, elder brother has walked for so long, and he keeps the vacant room alone. It's not normal to want to. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 165. Cao Zi's voice was hoarse and entangled in sentences, and his tongue touched the skin of Yang's shoulders from time to time, like a fishing man, sitting calmly on the shore playing with fish in the water. Yan Ji didn't hide his stern look in the mirror, and said coldly, "My hair is not dry yet." "Oh, it's my brother who was wrong. I was so obsessed with the fragrance on my body that I forgot to be serious." Cao Zi got up and continued to help Yang wipe his hair. But his mouth said, "What's wrong?" She just came out of the tub and was so provoked by him for so long. Couldn't her face turn red? Yang ignored his apparently ambiguous question, but said, "What are you doing here in my house?" "Hey, what's up? Zi comes back all the way, can't you come to visit Zi?" Because this guy dislikes her small breasts, Yan Ji doesn't even have the flirtation with him, so he doesn't catch cold at all in this apparently technical means of solicitation. If you have something, just let it go. Don't go around here. Yeah, Cao Zi put his fingers on the hair of the song and placed it on the tip of his nose, sniffing like an intoxication. "Ye is worthy of me, this kind of temperament makes Zixi really like tight." Yan Ji lost his patience and just wanted to stand up. At this moment, Cao Zixi held her waist and held her on the dresser. One hand fixed Yang's waist, and the other hand held Yang's chin up, and he bowed his head, breaking into her mouth like a wolf. The smell oozed from the corner of her mouth the next moment, and Cao Zhihan's action was all. He stared at Yan Ji's eyes and laughed. The bite of Yan Ji not only did not let him flinch, but stimulated his wolfiness. He stared at her brightly, her eyes burning to burn her inch, and he bowed his head and kissed her face and her neck in a frantic breath. His hand slipped into her placket. Yanj grabbed his hand, but his hand was broad, rough, and powerful, and it was not something she could not stop. I'm yours. Yan Ji stared at him. Whatever you do, you count the hatred of Cao family in the bottom of your heart, and have nothing to do with me. Vent your anger on a woman. This is how you learn outside what is the difference between your doing this and your two elder brothers. It really is a seed from the Cao family, and it's all disgusting in the bones. She spoke very fast, and this was all about gritting her teeth. But as soon as the words fell, the blouse on his body had already fallen off his waist. It was about these words that worked, and his eyes moved away from her chest, staring at her angry eyes like two fires burning. When I'm angry, my eyes really look good. Although he said that, his hands were on Yanj's chest, and his fingertips were rough, and Capricorn said, I stare at me like this / lead me, what should I do? Alas, I can't help it. The screamed at the rise, so shameless. Courageous. That's the smell I like. Song. The chicken fluttered his wings and fluttered in the space of mysterious fans. Dare to tease you like this, you hurry up on the wood, you old driver. You are afraid he will not succeed, and use your 108 type to overturn his car. Let him know how good you are. Song. She needs a dark technology that can block the chicks. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 166. Yanj retorted in his head, can he compare with me? You slap him as a male, but also winking and cocking his lips. This is irritating. Where is there a man? Chicken, after all, he is young, and it is already good to have this technology. If you don't look at him, you can teach him more. Let him see your magic car skills. Yanj is still thinking about what this guy just despised about her chest. Naturally, he wouldn't want to teach this guy, so he ignored the words of the chicken. Yan Ji stared at Cao Zhihan, and after a slow, he asked ironically, do you want to make a corpse, or do you want to salvage my corpse in the well outside tomorrow? Ye is really chastity. Cao Zhihan reached out, raised her leg, stood in the center of her leg, and embraced her in his arms, making him face to face, but inch apart. He bowed his head and kissed the eyes of his own words, I'm so dazzled by these eyes that I really like them. Obviously she was breathing fire. He bit his lips again, it's just that the words spoken aren't cute at all. If I were soaked in the water for a night, I wouldn't look so good if I was taken out of the well tomorrow. He is reluctant. Yanj thinks that this man is actually quite talented. After all, it's the most critical thing to be shameless. His cheek is really thick. Finally, the hand touched the little scissors on the dresser, and Yan Ji wanted to stab Cao Zhichuan's thigh. However, the mirror on the side exposed her every move. As the scissors were about to pierce Cao Zi's thigh, Yan Ji's wrist was caught by Cao Zi. Scissors fell to the ground. Cao Zixi lowered his head and bit his fingers into his mouth, and his peach blossom stunned and sang the words, complaining like a grievance, it's not worrying at all. But the hand didn't fall at all. He put his hand on the dressing table and threw it on the ground. He leaned over and pressed his words on the dresser. He grabbed her by one hand and pressed it on top of her head, and raised her leg on the other, looking at the beauties on the table. His voice was hoarse, oh, look, the plum blossoms on this table match your body. It looks good. Her body was white and snowy, and the redness on her chest was like the red plum in the snow. This dark red dressing table has a few plum blossoms carved in the same color, and the branches extend from the corner of the table, spreading out on the side of Yanj. At first glance, It looks like a deliberately created picture of a beauty painted on a fan. The thrilling beauty is also beautiful. He looked down at her, apparently the arrow was on the string, but he remained motionless. Yanj struggled and closed his eyes. She is not an ordinary girl. Maybe this kind of thing was encountered by the host, she would cry crying for death, but this is not her temperament. Really no man can make her cry and die for life. Even if it was to die, it would be a man to die for her. This man despised her chest, but hit her like this. One day, she had to teach this guy well. Caozijhan's hot fingertips seemed to be carrying Mars, and ran across her chest a little, and finally landed on her lips. He leaned down, scorching hot air in Yanji's eyes, and his voice was tangled like invisible threads in her body. Oh, you close your eyes, do you want me to do whatever you want? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 167. The words are motionless. Caozijhan raised his head slightly and looked at Yanji's eyebrows. His fingers touched the corners of her eyes. Yeah, it's all like this, don't cry. When Su Yan cries, everything is gone. But without saying a word, he said, I still can't bear to cry anymore. I hate women crying the most. If I'm tired, I won't get it. He embraced Yanj with both hands, hugged the person in his arms, and sat on the stool with the opportunity. He just held Yanj so tightly that Yanj's body could only cling to him. Well, my second brother just barely saw your body. Why don't you shout at people? It's so distressing for you to be so sullen. Yanji slightly raised his head and looked at him. There are not many intersections between the hosts of previous lives and the Caozi. Although this man climbed very high, but later died in a battle, he was accustomed to catching people's hearts, and as a result of his death, his resources were cheaper for his elder brother Caozijian. But until Caozi's death, there was no unnecessary intersection between the host and him, let alone the current situation. In this case, Yanj is actually a bit square. After entering the plane, most people in the plane will follow the original trajectory, unless affected by the butterfly effect. But she has just entered this plane, even if there is a butterfly effect. This man will not be affected so much at all. So, why? Yanj calmed down from the turmoil and anger from the beginning. She ignored his preparedness, and touched his chin with his fingers without shaving clean scum. How old are you this year? Caozijhan didn't say anything. The woman was just like a hedgehog just now, but now she was nestled in his arms like a cat. Too tame, besides being tame, she seemed to be having fun as a fun toy. This made him slightly uncomfortable. Yanj poked at his tall nose. What? You don't know how old you are? 21. Caozijhan reached out to catch Yanji's finger, but Yanji avoided it. She was pinching his neck, but her fingers were pressing his knot as if playing, I am the same age as me? Letting you call me a lifetime is a bit wronged. Yes, when is your birthday? He rolled his throat, looking at the eyelids and water flowing around her eyes as he looked at him, holding his hands around her waist and pressing her tightly on herself. He stared at her eyes gradually, his voice hoarse, and asked her, what do you ask so much for? She seemed to be unaware of his abnormality, and her voice was beautiful. It's my birthday for you next year, after all, like a mother. His hand went up from her waist, felt her softness, looked at her with a smile, and said, today is my birthday, how do you plan to celebrate? Yanji bowed his head and took a bite of his chin. If your second brother wakes up and sees me like this, will your gun be aimed at him? He kissed him on the cheek of Yanj. Isn't my gun right now? Yanj raised his hand, his strength was not too big, he slapped his cheek, and said, what nonsense, please help me put on my clothes. If your elder brother wakes up and sees me like this, I will be dead. My heart will have it. Yan Ji looked at it clearly, Cao Zixuan's anger flashed. Men are beaten by women, especially men mixed in the army, such as Cao Zi, who must be very masculine. The slap of words is poking at his lower limit. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 168. But Yan Gajiao's words probably provoked Cao Zio's itching point, so even if he was angry, he could only hold it in his heart. He gripped Yan Ji's little hand Capricorn with a big palm. I can't hit my brother and my face in the future, there is no next time. He said with a smile, but Yan Song felt that his words were more threatening. When he said the word next time, he even squeezed his fingers tightly, which is a kind of singer refers to pinched hand strength, not flirting. Sure enough, the man can only treat him as a gadget. Yan Ji frowned slightly and said softly, "You hurt me." The man immediately put Yan's hand to his mouth, "I kiss, and the sister-in-law will not hurt." Yan Ji glanced at him obliquely, drew his hand, and slid off his clothes to put on his clothes. "Go and see if your second brother is still mad. If you are out of breath, you must dig a pit and bury it. He is really cruel and ruthless. It doesn't kill anyone at all, but he doesn't look like a virtuous lady." Having said that, Cao Zixun did not entangle his words anymore, and really got up to see Cao Ziqiang. Cao Ziqiang's back had broken a large wound, and a lot of blood flowed from the ground. Although the blood of the wound had coagulated, his face was pale and looked no different from the dead. Cao Zixun felt around his neck, and there was still a pulsation. He would like to die for a while. "This is my brother, who is so cruel, aren't you afraid that he is really dead?" Yan Ji has wiped his hair on his own, and he didn't look back when he heard the words, "I'm not ruthless, can I accomplish his indecent as a brother?" Cao Zixun laughed, "So I'm merciful to me." Yan Ji glanced at him obliquely, "I want to be ruthless, are you willing?" "I'm exhausted, go to sleep first, and leave it here for the good brother to clean up." Before entering the room, Yanj seemed to remember something. She lifted the curtain and stopped and looked at Cao Ziu. "My maid named Ang Xiang grew up with me from a young age. Don't be right, what did she do? Otherwise, I would be a ruthless gangster." Cao Zi looked at her. "The host looks good, otherwise there won't be the title of the first beauty in Beijing." At this moment, Yanj was standing in front of Zuyu curtain, and the lights in the room were shining on Zuyu, but she stood there with more glory than Zuyu Guanghua. When she looked at him, her eyes looked as if the fireworks were shining to the extreme, but there was also a kind of shocking fierceness in the brightness. She is too beautiful. Not only does this ruthlessness not only reduce her beauty by half, but it also adds a thrilling charm, and the brilliance makes all those pearls and jade around her dim. Cao Zixun was foolish for a moment. The words turned around and entered the inner room. Zuyu collided and made a crisp sound. Zhuguang dazzled with the aperture spreading away. Her back figure behind Zuyu gradually drifted away. Cao Zixun's eyes disappeared, his head was down, and his face was complicated. The song in bed didn't fall asleep so quickly, and she asked the cub in her consciousness, "This guy is a mighty one." The experienced many setbacks, changing its former look of arrogance, sitting paralyzed on a lazy sofa, smoking a slender cigarette with a sip. After hearing the words lazily, "Don't you want me to tell you who the mighty one is? After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 169. Yan Ji did not understand the frustration and sorrow of the cub, and she asked patiently, "Is this guy a mighty one?" The chicken spit out his smoking ring fiercely, "Go on like you, just sleep him, whether he is powerful or not. If I am you, I will sleep on his clothes." Song. She remembered that there was a uniformed controller. When it comes to wearing uniforms, men and women will not let it go. The chicken puffed his breath again. Why, you and him haven't slept for so long. Is it because you're afraid he's powerful? Yan Ji sighed and did not deny, yeah, I have a shadow about the mighty one now. If it were him, I would rather die than be stubborn. The eyeballs in the chicken's mouth snorted, small, if I were you, I would squeak and sleep and wear him. Yanj is sure, if she really sleeps the mighty one, the chicken must jump. However, judging from the reaction of the cubs, Caozi should not be a powerful person. Yan Ji was relieved, and asked the chickens jokingly, why are you talking so yin and yang today? Are you looking for dissatisfaction? The cock's lazy voice instantly exploded with extreme sharpness, I still want to be dissatisfied. When you slap me, when have you been? When I go on like this, my third leg will be degraded. Song. The uniformed chicken was completely upset, but unfortunately, he couldn't indulge his desire. The cub was a bit sad when he heard this, but Yan Ji didn't know where to comfort him. Fortunately, the sorrow of the chicks came quickly, and after snarling, he continued to smoke on the lazy sofa and took a few words of comforting words, you have been stunned for so long, it's alright, think go to bed. Anyway, I'll hang with you anyway. It's as if she entered the plane just to sleep. Yan Ji was very upset, but she had the same temperament as the chicken, and she did not argue. And she shifted the topic with, when will the bricks finish? Used to this big thick leg to help her fight and open the road, now it suddenly disappears, I always feel empty and uncomfortable, especially when I just confronted Cao Zijhan, a brick can be done, Yanju spent so much energy. I miss the slab. Chicken, your own natal tool, you don't know when it will be completed, and I don't even know. Quietly speaking, I still don't provoke this moody guy. She wants to sleep well. After all, there is no way to make bricks, and she will continue to fight tomorrow. The movement in the outer room was very small, and Yan Ji also warned that Cao Zijhan would rush into the inner room at first, but fortunately, this guy hasn't reached the point of being really mad. She gradually dreamed. When he woke up the next day, there was no shadow of subtle fragrance around him. Yanj got up and wore clothes, and came out of the curtains, realizing that the mirrors and jewelry boxes on the dressing table in the room were intact. She walked towards the right again, not only without Cao Ziqiang, but also on the ground with no trace of blood. Oh, even the water in the bathtub was cleaned. The room was neat and tidy, and it really made people feel like those things were a dream last night. Yan Ji stood beside the bathtub and laughed. Suddenly thought that Cao Zijhan was really a wonderful person. The song in a slightly better mood was about to go out, and the incense rushing into the door almost didn't hit. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 170. Grandma and Grandma are awake, wait for me to fetch water. The water for washing in the weekdays has been prepared early in the morning, and there must be something going on this evening. Yanj grabbed the sleeve of subtle fragrance, where is the blusher? Seeing Yanj asking, she didn't hide it, she told Yanj what happened this morning like a bean. It turned out that Cao Ziqiang, the second master of the Cao family, was drunk last night, and said he wanted to go out for a little solution, but somehow he ran into the courtyard of Yanj and fell into the well behind the courtyard. Fortunately, Cao Ziqiang's little sister-in-law found out that he had taken people out, but even so, Cao Zijian, who was admitted to the hospital, is still not sober. Before the day dawned, Mr. Cao made someone fill the well. Hek Xiang said, I went out early in the morning. Everyone asked me what was going on. I was also curious. Why did these two young masters fall into the wells in our backyard? They blame me for sleeping too late last night and not hearing them. Be quiet, or you can watch the excitement. This stroke must have been made by Cao Zijhan. Even the well was filled. Is this because she's afraid she won't open the real well? Said Xiang whispered so much, and finally whispered in front of the words, Grandma, don't worry about it, it has nothing to do with you, the second grandfather is a self-sustaining person, like him, deserved to fall in the well. Yanj poked her forehead with a smile, don't say that. Ayaka immediately slaps herself a few times and says with a smile, I'll say it in front of Grandma, and others will definitely not say it. After washing, Yanj went to the upper court. Although the Cao family has fallen, such a thing as an petition every day has not fallen. Old Lady Cao had to smoke a pot early in the morning, but when Yanj went today, Old Lady Cao did not smoke. She half laid on the hoe, a pair of dusky eyes staring darkly at the entrance song. There are also several anti-Caozi's ants in the room. It was because Caozi built a mess in the courtyard of Yanj. Everyone glanced at Yanj when they entered the door. Most of these ants came from the land of Waliu, and they were still jealous of the young lady of the new era, secretly and ironically. Yanj said hello, and when no one handed her a stool, she said, Mother, I'll go down if nothing happens. Mrscao snorted coldly, in the past, the housekeeper was so busy that I couldn't see the shadows. I can understand that now you don't care about your house anymore. You are still hiding from me. Are you a disgusting wife who can't get in your eyes? Yanj smiled and looked at her, Mother, I'm your daughter-in-law, what's the matter if you can't get in my eyes? Mrscao tossed the teapot on the table to the song, miscellaneous things, but also turned you up, let you housekeeper, you are good, we have emptied our Cao family. Old Lady Cao was so angry that it was more because her second son fell into a well in the backyard of Yanj. When people heard about such things, they must have thought that Sunzi and the uncle had a leg. Otherwise, what would the uncle do in the courtyard of Sunzi at night? As long as the eldest son has been away for so long, of course the old lady Cao would not blame her second son for making, but only felt that she could not keep up with her son. But this kind of thing has to spread, and where the Cao family's face goes, so although she is angry and vomits blood, she can only talk about the housekeeper. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei-Pang. Chapter 171. Yan Ji could not guess the mind of Mrscao. She avoided the teapot and said with a sneer, it's really wrong for my mother. I remembered everything clearly when I was in charge. My mother-in-law couldn't bear it. My brother must have arrived in a while. Mother, you have doubts, we can call up the steward to take the ledger and check it in my pocket. Mrscao knew that her daughter-in-law did not accept discipline, but she did not expect that Yan Ji would talk back in front of so many people, and she was shaking with anger. Okay, good, do you think that marrying our family is wronged by you? Fang's family also wanted to overwhelm others. We don't dare to climb high. Yan Ji didn't think of anything and muddy. Following the words of old lady Cao, she immediately said, the mother has always been dissatisfied with her daughter-in-law. No matter what her daughter-in-law does, it is wrong. The daughter-in-law of Xiejiangziu. Old lady Cao pointed her fingers tremblingly, and she was so angry that her sputum was stuck in her throat. The sister-in-law was busy approaching her back. Well, sister-in-law is here with her mother. The curtain was lifted at this time, and Cao Zijhan, still in a military uniform, walked into the door, and was not polite. The strong masculinity of Cao Zi's body is not comparable to that of Cao Ziqiang, who always loves to rub powder, and Cao Ziqi, who is flabby because of smoking. He entered the door of Cao's house last night. No matter where he went, the women of Cao's house looked at him with bright eyes. Not to mention those aunts of Mr. Cao. He said something to Mrscao, and ignored MRSCAO. He personally moved a chair in front of Yanj, and wiped the chair with his arm. It's a grievance not to bring a chair to Sunzi. It's better to send away such a subordinate. When he looked at Yanj, he didn't hide his charming face. Not only was Madame Cao so angry, but even those ants stared at Yanj secretly. Needless to say, the second son of the Cao family fell into the well when he wanted to climb the bed in the middle of the night. Now even the third child of the Cao family is fascinated by her. This is where everyone comes out, this is a fox. Yanji ignored the indignant gaze of the crowd. She sat on the chair and said with a smile, the third brother is interested. I'm satisfied. Cao Zixuan sang a pair of peach eyes with a smile on his face and smiled. The expression was very charming. I didn't sleep well last night, so I don't make up for it. I came here so early, but something. As for the housekeeper, my mother suspected that I had subsidized the family of Cao's family, and I was angry. Yanj said in a grieved voice, mother also doesn't want to think about it. My family has a great career, where does it matter to Cao's family? This is a little bit of a family. It turns out that the Cao family is Ding Dion's family, and the Cao family is also a big door in the capital. MRSCAO coughed a few times and just spit the sputum in the spittoon. When she heard the words, she turned her head and stared at the words. Okay, you look down on my Cao family and say, why did you even marry yourself? When you marry, you are my Cao family. You stupid can't even control your family. I said you what's wrong?